Before I start, actually, do I want to share this before I start? So I did have like a slip up, as they say, or my first real interaction with a break in sobriety after 6 years. And I'll get to what happened and what led to that. The fact is that I know what it's like to battle addiction, and I've been going through this process of recovery for 6 years. I got sober at 18 years old when I was really struggling with an eating disorder and super self-destructive behaviors, drugs, alcohol, out in the clubs in LA. So I'll kind of give a little bit of background and get to where I am now and what happened recently. So I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, but I've been out in California now for 7 years just about, but I moved out here for college. And before that, I'm from a home that there's alcoholism. It runs in my family now, obviously experiencing it myself. And also just not for 1 second did I think to myself, oh, that must be hard to be an alcoholic. I never was able to see it that way. I was just kind of like, how dare you do that to me? So I think from a young age, I really got this idea. I don't know why I ended up receiving this belief, but from a young age felt like I needed to look for my worth from other people. Like it just wasn't naturally within me without other people telling me and patting me on the back and letting me know I'm okay and I'm good enough. So that's kind of where I feel like the source of my addiction came from. And when I was in middle school, starting at the age of 13, I started drinking and I just loved it. I loved rebelling, sneaking out. I was just always like that wild child. Quickly, I noticed that my relationship with drugs and alcohol was different than it was with my friends, because I felt like they could take it or leave it. Like they would smoke something or drink something, and I could tell they were kind of just hanging out, moving on and talking about other things. And meanwhile, in my mind, there's like a monkey on my back just being like, okay, when are we gonna do the next one? When are we gonna have another shot? When are we gonna smoke the next joint? It just was always gnawing at me. And I'm just sitting there uncomfortable, wondering how everybody else is just moving on with their life. And then when I was a junior in high school, I wanted to play soccer in college, and I ended up breaking my collarbone. That's when I developed an eating disorder. So it was kind of the combination of I didn't have sports to keep me out of trouble, and I also didn't have sports to make me feel good about myself anymore. I couldn't go to the game and earn some self-esteem. It was just like, nope, this is just Niki on her own. She goes to school, she goes home, she feels terrible about herself. Quickly it turned from something I did to either stay thin or whatever, and I just bring it up because for me it really comes down to the same thing, and it turned into more of a coping mechanism. It was a way for me to numb out. And the same thing with drugs and alcohol. I mean, every single time I drank, I blacked out. Every single time I drank, I did things I wouldn't want to do. I went off to college, which I remember, how on earth are my parents letting me move to California where I'm going to be on my own? They must be insane. So, and at the same time, I'm like, please give me all the freedom in the world, but you're also crazy for giving it to me. And so I went off to college, and then literally I remember being terrified to be alone in a room with myself because I didn't trust myself. I had all these plans. I'm going to be a good person, and let me just muster up enough strength to be the person I want to be. But every single day in college, I woke up with all sorts of dreams and goals for the day. 2 minutes later, someone texts me, let's go smoke, let's go do this. Maybe there's a small part of me that's like, no, don't do it. And then the other big giant part of me is just like, yeah, we're going to go do that right now. You know, I had no choice. I didn't have, and that's what I learned about the word powerlessness, is that I really didn't have power to make the choices that I really wanted to make. Because I have this thing called addiction and I don't know it, I'm doing all these behaviors that are definitely insane, and I have all these other reasons to think I'm a bad person because of the way that I acted when I drank, or my lack of willpower, how I just felt like, oh, I'm such a weak person, what's wrong with me? So during college, it got really bad. I started going out to the clubs, and you guys know what happens out there. It's not good. And just having all the access to whatever drugs and alcohol I wanted. And what happened is I would just go out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever day of the week, and I'm 17, 18 years old. I'm judging myself just as much as I think other people are judging me. I have no idea why I'm acting like that. For me, like, getting attention and validation from anyone made me feel good. It was a drug to me. It's the same thing, with Instagram and everything like that. It's like, what I've learned is that validation is also a drug. It releases the same chemical in my brain as any other drug. So it was always very addicting to me to get external validation from other people. What ended up happening is I wanted to go to treatment for an eating disorder. I went to one because I still didn't think I had a problem with drugs and alcohol, but I could see that I had a problem with the other stuff. When it came to the eating disorder, I could tell that there's something not right. Like, how I'm treating myself is not loving, and it's not good. And I just realized, like, I'm gonna die. I can't do this anymore. I was like on the streets of Hollywood, and I'm 18 years old, a girl from Boston, raised in a great family, and I'm like finding myself on Hollywood Boulevard with no money, and like, I'm just tired. I can't do it anymore. That's where my healing journey began. I walked in there and they just took one look at me and they were like, I think you might be in the wrong place. The first thing that happened for me was I started to realize that I started to listen to that voice in my head for the first time and realize, oh my God, no wonder why I'm miserable. My head is literally so mean to me. Everything it's saying to me is just terrible. And then I went to my first AA meeting and they were talking about self-esteem, and I was like, what the heck? I had no idea that being an alcoholic had anything to do with self-esteem. I wasn't planning on relating, is what I'm saying. And this woman offered to read the AA book with me, and I read it and I was floored. I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I didn't know that I had this, but I definitely have this. And it explains everything about me. That allowed me to have some compassion for myself, realize, like, I'm not a terrible person. There's something going on here. There's something different about me when it comes to drugs and alcohol, and it explains my behavior. And the biggest part that I related with was the spiritual malady. I literally felt like I didn't have a soul. I remember writing that down in my journal. Like, I feel like I'm empty inside. The shift has been in my relationship with myself and how I feel in my skin. And I went through the AA steps and I found like gold, just absolute gold. Like, there's this book I read that I really love, and it's basically talking about how AA is a bunch of drunks that stumbled upon ancient wisdom. And I just love that so much because it really is so true. It's like what the book says, we get beaten into a state of reasonableness, letting go of old ideas. And obviously a big one of them is about a relationship with God. Before, I was just like they said in the book, I thought people who believe in God were just like using it as a crutch, and it was weird and I didn't get it. And now for me, I can honestly say my personal, like, that's what I love about AA is we get to find our own personal relationship with it. And the way I was able to find my relationship with God was by getting in touch with my own spirit, by getting rid of all the negative beliefs and all this stuff that was blocking me from thinking that I was lovable and good enough, and getting deep down within myself and just seeing the God within me. It changes my relationship with myself because now I don't have to live in my head and think I'm not good enough for all these reasons. I get to question those beliefs. And another thing is looking out at the world and realizing how amazing it is to just be alive. And I remember seeing plants for the first time after getting sober and just realizing, wow, have trees always been there? I didn't notice, my head was so far up my own butt. I just didn't notice anything other than myself. And I looked up at the sky and I was like, wow, well, that's crazy. That shit just goes on and on forever. Like, you're telling me that's just, what? Like, that's insane. So for me, my spirituality, I feel spiritually connected when I start to just look at everything that we see as normal as not normal. It's just the ability to find what it means to be selfless. Like it says in the book that the root of our troubles is self-centeredness. And that has literally changed my life. Because I didn't even know I was self-centered because I hated myself. I didn't know that I was self-centered, but that means I'm thinking about me all day. And if I walk around thinking about me all day, I'm gonna be miserable. That's what I've learned and that's what I've found. And I really think that the blessing of being an addict and alcoholic is that I don't have the luxury to just think about me all day. I don't have the luxury to resent everybody and hate the world and all this stuff. I will destroy myself if I don't make it right within me. And so that has been obviously the source of my own peace, but also being able to help other people with their journey is just unbelievable. To get to what I was going to tell you guys at the beginning about my experimentation phase, is like I really thought I was immune. I'm like, oh well, I'm almost 6 years sober. I know what it means to be an alcoholic. What happened is over time I think my ego, like it says, people talk about your ego's just kind of in the background doing push-ups. It's like I wasn't looking and my ego's just doing push-ups in the background, and I start to think, oh, well, I got this, I'm fine, you know, and I start hanging around with people who smoke weed, and I'm like, oh, weed is just like this medicinal, beautiful thing, and it's magical, and it's amazing, it's fine. But it was like a slow little progression of like, I'm smoking CBD. Why? I don't know, because I have a hole that I need to fill with substances when I don't feel myself spiritually. I a little bit lost my connection with myself. I'm really feeling it again now, which is amazing. But for a minute there, I was feeling really, really spiritually disconnected. And I think it makes sense that I'd want to reach for something to make me feel different. And I ended up just taking a weed edible. And it was just like, it happened so quickly. I was just like, oh, this is totally fine. And then it happened and I was like, I don't know. I had that battle, you guys, because part of me was like, it's kind of fine. I know that I have an addict tendencies and an addict brain, and I know what that road leads towards. And I know that for me, being sober is such a gift. I want to be able to achieve a state within myself that I don't need relief from. I want to be able to just be with me and not need to take something to feel different and better. My ego is a little bit upset about losing my 6 years of sobriety, but it is what it is. I have to swallow that and move forward. I had to go through a little bit of an identity crisis because I was like, well, who am I if I'm not 6 years sober? And do I still have things to share? Am I still going to be able to help people? The reality is I still do have my whole journey, and I'm still me, and I still can share with other people. I'm just, getting back on track myself.